DC Comics House of Mystery in the 1970s. Do you dare enter the House of Mystery? Longtime fans of comics and sequential art remember that iconic tagline well. Sadly, despite being one of DC Comics' most popular horror anthology series, the comic book that prominently featured the haunting question on its garish covers has faded into Bronze Age memories. Ask a modern-day comic book fan what DC Comics is known for, and the common and most appropriate answer will be superheroes. The publishing house that brought the world Batman, Superman, The Flash, and Wonder Woman boasts a fantastic collection of iconic heroes who remain viable pop culture icons after decades of existence. However, superheroes alone did not build the company's strong foundation. DC Comics produced a great many titles outside of the superhero sphere. DC published a host of popular Silver Age horror and war comics that lasted well into the early 1980s. Of the supernatural-oriented scare books, The House of Mystery was the company's flagship title for many years. Scores of other horror anthology books from DC Comics found their way to spinner racks during the Bronze and Silver Ages. Ghosts, House of Secrets, The Unexpected, and Tales of Ghost Castle were among several titles produced by the iconic comic book house. Marvel Comics tried its hand at grabbing a share of the horror market to only brief success. DC Comics did quite well with anthologies, while Marvel's attempt at producing horror books in the early 1970s mostly died by the mid-1970s, despite producing some truly outstanding material. DC didn't abandon the anthology comics world and try to re-enter late in the game like Marvel, giving the distinguished competition a much stronger foundation and providing the hungry readership with several well-established titles to purchase every month. Although many B and C-level books were short-lived, they delivered quality stories. With so much of the same talent working on all the DC horror books, the various anthologies were not much different from one another. Of them all, the long-running title The House of Mystery remained the top horror anthology DC Comics created. Someone has to be at the top of the ladder, and the weird host Kane sat on the last rung overlooking his residence, the House of Mystery. A fun little vampire tale. The 3 volumes of Showcase presents the House of Mystery reprint issues number 174 through number 226. Fans who pick up these collections can relive many of the 1960s and 1970s tales not seen since their original release. One simple and fun story, House of Horrors, written by Jack Olek and illustrated by Nestor Redondo, is the House of Mystery at its best. The quirky 1940s-style pulp tale was published in the House of Mystery number 197 in December 1971 and wallows everything a young reader wanted to enjoy in disposable entertainment. Frank's new girlfriend, Anna, lives in a creepy old house on top of a hill. After driving her home after a date, he notices 2 people moving a coffin into her old house. Frank becomes highly suspicious of the goings-on in the old house and starts to poke around to figure out the mystery behind the errant coffin. Anna is not thrilled with his increasingly idiotic behavior, as he embarrasses her in front of her brother and sister, with whom she lives. Frank is undeterred and drags the law into the mess, claiming the family is hiding a vampiric secret. Brother Jan owns 3 wooden coffin-like crates, which are filled with dirt. They are used to grow rare mushrooms indoors. Is Frank crazy, or is the mushroom-growing hobby a ruse to hide the siblings' true form as vampires? Sorry, but no one's giving the ending away here. You'll have to find yourself a copy. Traditional monster stories with oddball spins are fun to read, and House of Mystery never disappointed when publishing such tales. The reader keeps guessing until the end to find out what the answer to the mystery is, as there's usually an out-of-left-field ending. Sure, some of the endings are wildly telegraphed, but what the hey? A drawback to some House of Mystery stories was the overly juvenile nature catering to younger readers. An upside to the comics' code-friendly tales was the lack of reliance on excessive violence or exploitation to grab the reader's attention. A reader, young or old, could draw great enjoyment from a healthy and generous suspension of disbelief side by side with a desire to read a light-hearted horror tale. A House of Mystery for the Me decade. Creatively, House of Mystery saw some of its best work appear in the 1970s, although the book had already been around a great many years. The comic debuted in 1951 during the horror boom fueled by EC Comics. When public opinion turned against horror comics, the House of Mystery survived by drastically toning down its horror content. The anthology became science fiction-centric and remained so until 1968 when Kane became the new host. What inspired the move? In the 1960s, Warren Publishing revived unapologetic horror comics in the form of creepy and eerie magazines. DC Comics eventually returned its anthology books to horror territory, albeit in accordance with the Comics Code. Warren didn't have to worry about the code since the books were in magazine format. When Warren's horror magazine sales slipped in the 70s, the publishing house turned to violent content to boost sales, a sad desperation tactic. DC Comics didn't go this route and didn't have to. The House of Mystery's 1970s output is worth examining because the style of the comic tales works quite well. The book's spirit remained faithful to the fun old-time comic books once embodied while also presenting homages to the classic horror movies that were a staple of television from the late 1950s through the early 1980s. In a tragic sign of the times, reruns of old horror movies were slowly losing steam in the 1970s, and the hardcore monster fanbase was shrinking. Many of DC Comics' horror anthologies also seemed to lose steam in terms of sales. Me-decade comic book fans who needed a horror anthology source did have a great one throughout the 1970s. The House of Mystery delivered the Comics Code-approved goods and a nice alternative to the superhero-heavy spinner racks of the era. The mystery concludes. The quality of the writing in the House of Mystery remained strong past the 1970s and into the 1980s, but not strong enough to keep reader numbers up. Issue number 321, published in October of 1983, was the final issue of the first series. The comic book that delivered so many ironic endings experienced its own ironic end, as the final issue had a Halloween month cover date. The House of Mystery and host Kane would return periodically, but things were never the same as in the glory years. At least fans can relive the reprints time and time again.